Mother Funny Time with Andie and Angie.
2 cousins, 8 kids, 1 grandkid, 2 states.
And a whole lot of fun. Woo! Welcome back, Mother Funny Tribe. Angie and Andy on another fine episode of Mother Funny. And it's making me sleepy because we're talking about sleep training. And now I need a nap. But Angie would say, don't you get a nap. If you want to sleep well at night, you have to stay up. So last episode, we talked about how what you did for your kids and all of your kids, now we can say all of them slept by 9 weeks through the night. 8 weeks for the most part. One a little took his time. But that's incredible to me because I don't know if my kids have ever slept through the night. I don't sleep through the night.
Well, that could be part of the problem.
It could be it. I'm pretty sure we have strong wake-up genes. In fact, I'm just going to share this side note. My mother-in-law told me that growing up, especially in, I think it was high school, junior high, high school. I think it started in junior high. She said that her mom, and her sister would go to sleep, like, take naps throughout the night. Like, they go to bed, they would go to school, do their extracurricular activities, eat dinner, go to sleep, wake up a couple hours later, do some homework for an hour or two, go back to sleep, get up again, do more. They did it every night. And she said, my mother-in-law said they would, like, the 3 of them would be up in the middle of the night, sometimes talking, they would be eating, they go, and they would just, somebody was up at their house all hours of the night. And then they go to school. So they would take these little naps every night. And she's like, our neighbors would be like, does anyone ever sleep in your house? The only one who slept in the house was their dad, was my mother-in-law's dad. But the 3 women only napped here and there. And I'm like, that is the gene that is in my family. Like, we try not to live that way, but the force is strong.
And clearly it worked for them. That's the amazing part. Because they were clearly successful and did really well in their life.
Yes.
So it's not like they led unproductive, tired out, exhausted lives where they didn't do anything all day. Like, they were extremely productive and did a lot on minimal sleep.
And some of it was so they threw parties like every weekend in the basement. You know, like, think of like the 50s, 60s, parties in the mom and dad's basement. They would throw these parties every weekend. And so part of it was that they would be exhausted, but have to get their party list ready. So they get their party, make all their party calls, take a nap, wake up, start homework at 1 a.m. So it was, and they are very successful people. So there you go. That's the old school sleep training.
And I think that does touch on kind of something we were mentioning last time. Is part of it could be genetics or how you were created can impact and can affect your sleep. And I think not many people talk about that, especially not moms of young ones, because it's just so like, well, this is what the books say, or this is the articles, or this is what the pediatrician says I need to do. And it's like, whoa. Start first with like your child and who is your child. And obviously everybody wants to do what's best for your child, but you're also learning to get to know your child as a baby, and what works for one child might not work for another, or what works for a cousin, or what works for a friend, or like you're saying for your mother-in-law. That clearly worked for her. Maybe that doesn't work for you or for your child. And just to be able to have an open mind with it and not be so set on like, this is what I'm going to do, or this is what so-and-so said I needed to do, or this worked for this child, so it's going to work for this one. Not at all. And I think the more kids I've had, the more I've realized how relaxed I need to be when it comes to parenting, because you cannot have a one-size-fits-all parenting structure whatsoever. Same thing for discipline, which we're not going to talk about discipline today, but one type of discipline might work for one child and not for another one, and that's okay. Like, we don't need fast and hard rules because kids are kids. And they're created differently, and we need to allow them to be who they're meant to be, whether that's when they're awake or when they're asleep or when they're like your mother-in-law who's partying at 12 a.m. but doing her homework at 1 a.m. Like, it works. It just works.
It's true. It's true. So tell me, what was the McCarter child? What's the Angie method? Give me like a night routine that you would do for bedtime that was so miraculous.
when they were babies, it was very much like I fed them or nursed them, I should say, at like 6, 9, 12, 3, 6, 9, 9:30 they were asleep 100% of the time. Like, and it's funny, I started that with Riley and then I just kind of kept it at that time. But before I would do that final nursing time, I would swaddle them. So they were like all swaddled, all nice and cozy. And then I would nurse them, whichever baby it was, and then put them in their crib. And sometimes they would be awake. Sometimes they would have already fallen asleep. And all of my kids had pacifiers. We are huge pacifier people. Like, I know pacifiers are clearly controversial. For us, pacifiers worked. Every single one of my babies nursed, and every single one of my babies took a pacifier. And I would put them in their crib, whether they were asleep or whether they were falling asleep. And then they would sleep from 9:30 to then 6 a.m. And if they were still asleep at 6 a.m., I would wake them up at 6 a.m. to then nurse them again. And what I did during the day, though, was their naps were shorter. So maybe they would only nap for an hour or an hour and a half. And they would nap like in between those feeding times, obviously. But as they got older, obviously you're taking less and less and less naps. And then once they were about a year, year and a half, or that age where they go down to one nap, I only let my toddlers at that age sleep for an hour and a half. So their nap is only an hour and a half, and then I'm waking them up again because I want to make sure that they're going to fall asleep at night. And one of the benefits of having babies or toddlers or children when they sleep through the night, there's so many health benefits to that. But if they ever wake up in the middle of the night, maybe one night, 2 nights in a row, I know something else is going on. That could mean they have an ear infection. That could mean they're teething. That could mean maybe they have some type of a cold or they're coughing. And so for me, if the baby did wake up 1 or 2 nights in a row, I could go to the pediatrician and say, hey, my baby or my toddler or my child sleeps through the night. They're not. Can you please see what else is going on here? Because it would be an alert of like something else is wrong. So I like that consistency. I also knew how to like plan my day according to my baby or my toddler's schedule. And I would know, like, for Riley, she had to, when she was a toddler, we'll say from age 1 to like age 3, she had to take a nap from 1 to 2:30, 100% of the time. And we'd be at the park and it would be 12:50 and you could just see it like, oh my gosh, she's going to fall asleep or whatever. Like, you could even see it in her behavior, whether she would get too tired or sometimes she'd be like crazy excited. And I'm like, oh, I know once she lays down, she'll fall asleep. But for Riley, it was 100% of the time. It had to be from like 1 to 2:30. And then it's like, okay, wake up. Here we go. So some parents now, they want their babies to nap for like 3 hours or 4 hours. And that works for their family because maybe the mom has to work. Maybe she wants to get some chores done at the house, or maybe it works for their schedule. For us, my babies never took a nap. Even as babies, they never took a nap that was 2 hours or over 2 hours, ever. Like, that just never happened.
Wow. So circling back to the nighttime routine, when you put your babies down and they cried, what would you do?
They didn't cry. That's the thing.
They never cried?
Like, I'm sure Riley maybe cried because I thought the cry it out method was the best way. But because they were so exhausted, it was just they'd fall asleep. Even if they were awake, they're so exhausted, they just fall asleep. So it's not like they did cry. Like I said, in the last episode, I could not let Brooklyn cry or cry it out. That didn't work for her. And then the twins, again, we had to make sure that they wouldn't cry because then they'd wake each other up. So they are so tired, they both had to fall asleep. Peyton might fall asleep faster before Tegan did, but they would just, because they're all nice and cozy and swaddled and exhausted.
Okay, but this is what I'm going to say. And maybe it's the 9:30, but I did the same thing. Bedtime routine, nursing right before sleep, swaddling up. You wrap them like the baby burrito, keep them warm, keep it calm, lay them down. And then the minute they lay down, they're just screaming.
Am I supposed to say something?
All of them. Like all of them.
I don't know.
Like I did all that screaming. But maybe, I mean, it's hard to tell now, but it could be that maybe I tried 8:30 and it would have been better to try at 9:30. I don't know, but again, all kids are different. But you had 5 that did that. So that's what's impressive to me, because I know your kids are different. Like, they have different personalities and levels of activity, and they all slept. Different genders.
And you probably remember when Brooklyn had just turned 2, and then we were having a harder time getting her to fall asleep. And so that's when I talked to you, Danielle, and Barb. My mom was there because I was like, oh my gosh, this chick is 2, but she is having a hard time falling asleep by 8:30, because she would just be wound up and a little wild. And we had this whole conversation, and that's when I realized she can't take a nap anymore. Brooklyn had barely turned 2, and we had to take her nap. And I felt so bad, and it was horrible. But by her not napping during the day, and again, she had just turned 2, then she could fall asleep. The other thing I had to do with Brooklyn, just because she had some sensory needs, is at about 8:30, right after she turned 2, we took her nap, and then around 8:30, I would put her in the stroller, and I would walk her around our neighborhood, and she had to fall asleep in the stroller. And then we'd let her sleep in the stroller for maybe a half hour or an hour, and then I would put her in her crib. So that was also something I only did for her. I never had to do that for any of the other kids, but she just had.
And that was it too?
And that was it.
What age?
2. Yeah. Age 2.
So you just stroll her around.
Yeah, we knew for her, because she was like sensory seeking and always on the go. So it's almost like I had to physically strap her into her stroller to get her body not to move anymore, because her body needed to be still in order for then her mind to be still, in order for her to fall asleep, plus the motion with the stroller. So I just had to come up with a specific strategy. And again, it's trial and error. I just knew I cannot have a baby who's 2 years old who is up till 11 o'clock at night. That's not healthy for her. It's not healthy for me, because now I'm not able to fall asleep. And now I'm not able to go to bed or get the stuff that I need to get done. And again, she couldn't cry it out, but also, should a baby cry for 3 hours? I mean, everyone has their philosophy, but if I was one of those like cry it out method people, they are telling people, parents, let them cry it out, whether it's an hour or 2 hours. That's when you have to say, okay, this might work for some people, but is that causing you anxiety, like you mentioned, the cry it out method? Or is this the best option for my child, to let them cry for 2 hours? For us, I couldn't do that. That was not going to be me as a person, to let a child cry for 2 hours. So we had to come up with a whole like stroller method. There you go. That was the stroller method. I have the tired out method. I have the swaddle method.
Yeah, when we did the cry it out, when we were trying to do the cry it out method, I remember just sitting by their door for like 45 minutes and just like crying myself. Like, I can't keep doing this. And they weren't calming down. They weren't self-soothing or whatever it is. And then I would go in there. So then I ended up doing more of the pick them up, put them down. So you pick them up, pat them on the back, stay with them for a minute, put them down, walk out, close the door. So I did that for a while. Like, that's probably how I got all of them to sleep. But it wasn't 8 weeks, and it took a while. So it is what it is. But also, fun fact, we have sleepwalkers and sleep talkers in our family genes.
Tell us about this.
Yes. So my dad, every single night of his life, wakes up screaming in the middle of the night. He doesn't remember it. He also sleep talks, which when I was a teenager, it was cool, because if I ever wanted to like be like, I want to go somewhere and I know maybe I shouldn't go there, I'd be like, hey, Dad, can I do this and this? And he'd look at me with these big bloodshot eyes and be like, yeah. And I'd be like, Dad said I could go, but he'd be totally asleep. That's when I was younger. Anyway.
You asked permission to your dad, who's asleep and sleep talking. So technically you could not get in trouble, because technically
I asked my dad.
You asked for permission.
And Dad said yes.
Okay, if there's a teenager listening, not that there's a tip or trick for you that I don't know if the best advice, but Andie did it, and she's here today.
Worked for me. But you know what? It's a double-edged sword.
That's hilarious.
Because when your dad is a sleepwalker, he might come out in just his undies. Totally asleep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But he would also like randomly do things like, I remember one time he was like, to my brother, Chris, give me a quarter. I need a quarter. And my brother's like 7, like, I don't have a quarter. It's funny. Anyway.
That sounds traumatizing. The way you just explained that sounds traumatizing.
Yeah, he was a little traumatized. My dad is hilarious. And my dad would not do that when awake. But so we have a lot of fun family stories and my dad's sleep talking. But every night, my oldest talks in her sleep. My middle talks, moves, walks around, turns on and off lights. My youngest talks. So they're all like, my kids' spouses know if you're going to share a room with one of my kids, you're going to probably have some fun stories of things they said or did. But my younger two sleep through the night like champs. And they're all adults.
I was going to say.
But nobody asks me how they sleep trained.
Now that they're in their 20s, they sleep great. They talk away.
Sleep great.
They walk away. It's a good time.
Yeah, but the sleep training cried out method, it's brutal. I'm not going to lie. It's brutal. I don't know what the experts say if it's good or not. I do know, like, back in my day, it was more of a control issue. Like, the parents need to be in control, and just they say when a child goes to sleep and they say when a child gets up. So take that as you will. But again, if maybe your child doesn't cry, like maybe you did the cry it out method for your child, because I know many people who their kids might cry for like 5-10 minutes and go to sleep. Like if my kids cried for 5 or 10 minutes, I would totally have done the cry it out method, but they didn't. So
I think for moms who are researching like sleep training, look into the gentle form of sleep training. Like, don't just get stuck on I'm sleep training / cry it out, because that sleep training does not mean cry it out. That's just one part of sleep training like we're talking about, because there's many options for sleep training. The point is you want your child to sleep, because moms need their children to sleep. Moms are exhausted. They need those babies. They need those toddlers to sleep. I know with Cole, something that we've done is he sleeps in his crib, but then we stay in the room with him until he falls asleep. That's not anything I've done with my girls. We'd put them in the crib and they would fall asleep, and whether we were in there or not. Cole cannot handle it if he is alone. And one thing I realized was he has 4 older siblings. He is used to being around people 100% of the time. So then how can I, for a toddler who's used to being around people all the time, then put him to bed alone? That's literally the exact opposite of what's gone on his entire day. Now, I don't know what that's necessarily called. Maybe that's called the chair method. There's also like a mat method. For us, it's just hey, we're being consistent. His whole day he's around people, so at night when he falls asleep, he's going to be around someone. We're not in the crib with him. Obviously, we don't really fit. But we're in like the bed next to him, so that way he at least has the comfort of someone there. And again, he falls asleep pretty quickly anyway, so it's not like we're in there forever. I just couldn't imagine him crying it out as a toddler because he's alone. That's more of that separation anxiety piece, if that makes sense. So part of it is also looking at what the child's day has been and then almost being consistent in the nighttime as well. I don't know if that's good or bad. That's just what we've done, is try to analyze the entire person and the entire situation instead of like one book, one way, one method.
And that's the thing. This is my problem with books. And I've said it before with parenting books and how-to books, is one person will say what worked for their kids, and then we'll get like a group of other people who it worked for those specific kids, and they're like, I've solved parenting, I've solved sleep training, I've solved discipline, I've solved this. And then you think that, oh my gosh, something's wrong with me, something's wrong with my kids because I'm doing these things and it's not working. Well, that's because one size does not fit all a lot of times. So yeah, after reading so many different parenting books, I was exhausted, honestly. And then at one point I'm like, you know what? This doesn't work for my kid. And you also don't know, like, mentally what my kids have going on. Like, do they have ADHD? Do they have this or that? Like, there's different considerations that you might think your child is just being disobedient. And maybe I was taught my kids are being disobedient. But in reality, there was things that their brain was doing that I needed to take into account. And that definitely goes with sleeping, because there's also the like, if your child's not sleeping, getting up through the night, they're not obeying. They're being disobedient. You told them to lay down and they're getting up. You told them don't get up anymore and they're sneaking out. They're whatever. So, yeah, it's hard. I'm just going to say it's hard, and you do have to figure it out. So Cole he's 3.5. He's almost 4. He'll be 4 this summer.
Right.
And so you guys at night, you just kind of stay with him for a little bit while he falls asleep.
Yeah. And there's white noise. We turn the white noise on for him. For the girls, we had this super cute little lamb that had white noise. Riley, in particular, we used the one that was like a whale sound, which is just so funny. She loved that. White noise has been super helpful. I think we do need to mention co-sleeping, because that's so controversial, and I never did co-sleeping, so I can't really speak to that. All I can say is that in many countries, co-sleeping is considered normal, or that's what a lot of people do in different countries. However, in America, it's not necessarily recommended. American Pediatrics does not recommend it due to safety concerns. And I don't want to talk about it, but what's your opinion? Because we have to mention it. We can't like not mention it.
I like how you won't say anything negative. You're like, you talk about it. You have anxiety.
Andy, you do it. I
it
can't.
Scares you.
I can't. I could tell you what the American Pediatrics says, but I'm not going to do that either. Look it up, people.
Can we talk about discipline? Can we talk about intrusive thoughts?
I will not. One, I did intrusive thoughts. I did those episodes.
But we didn't do intrusive thoughts at nighttime.
Oh my gosh. We're going to have a guest speaker for that episode. I will not
Angie
be here.
will not be here. She will not even say that she's part of the podcast.
Anyway, I will not participate in that podcast.
She will not.
Co-sleeping.
So,
you talk about it.
Co-sleeping.
I won't do it.
I will talk about it. I'll give you my opinion.
I'm not giving you mine. I'm just saying be safe.
Go ahead.
Also, I'm saying be safe. Be safe and look and research all the things when it comes to safety and sleeping.
That's as close as you'll get to Angie saying something negative. We know how you feel. We can read between the lines. Okay, so I will tell you my opinion, because apparently I'm not afraid. I'm already calling people who are super prideful, not prideful, proud about their cry it out methods.
Say it, prideful.
But we know that's my own insecurities.
You prideful cry it out method. Now we're gonna do controversial co-sleeping.
Come here, bring me those co-sleepers.
This is why we have a podcast together, because I can't and I won't do certain things.
So I get into it, is what I'm hearing. So when Daisy was a newborn, I would fall asleep. Like, again, I was 20 years old when she was born, and we didn't really know we didn't know people with kids her age that were our age. Anyway, so I remember at night, I would bring her to bed. Like, when we went to bed, she went to bed, and I would fall asleep nursing her, like almost every night for the first month. And I remember I would fall asleep, and then I would wake up in a panic. And I would be like half awake, like hitting my bed, trying to find her. And like every night for a month, tore apart my bed. And every night Chris would wake up and be like, she's in the crib. Like, he would wait till I fall asleep and he would put her in the crib every night. And then one night it was just one too many. And he's like, she's in the crib. Like, stop this madness. Because I had so much anxiety that I would roll over on her. And so it was hard for me. Like, I would let my kids, like, we would, like, if they woke up in the middle of the night, like, I would nurse them and fall asleep, and they would fall asleep, and I would try, but it would stress me out enough to where I would wake up and then put them back. I know that they make these little, what do you call them? Like block kind of things. They make things now to where you can more safely co-sleep.
They attach to the bed, right?
They have some that attach to the bed. They even have these like foam cutouts that you can like put between you so you're not going to roll over on your child. I think that's the number one, is just rolling over on your child, because it does happen. And if the mattress is too soft, you don't want your child to flip over. it's just too stressful for me. I couldn't really co-sleep, but they did fall asleep with me. Now, as they got older, do they crawl in bed? Would they crawl in bed and fall asleep? Yeah. They would totally crawl in bed at some point. You know, like 4, 5, 6, they would crawl in bed, fall asleep, and we're tired. We're not going to wake up and be like, no, you can't sleep with us. So yeah, if that's considered co-sleeping, we would let them crawl in bed. But yeah, falling asleep on purpose when my kids were infants, even up until 2, like it just made me too nervous.
And now they're even saying don't have those cushy bumpers in the crib. You know, now they're like mesh and don't have blankets in the cribs, don't have obviously pillows in the cribs because of all of that. So especially it seems like in the American culture, there's a lot of pressure to have your baby in a crib or in a pack and play with pretty much on their back, swaddled with nothing else, not even stuffed animals in the crib because they're trying to keep things as safe as possible. And like you're talking with co-sleeping, that's when you have blankets and pillows and, you know, comforters and mattresses and parents. And that's when could something happen? God forbid. We don't want to talk about it right now. But then there are those people who are like, I'm co-sleeping. This is what has been in my culture for all these years, or this is what I want to do because of a specific attachment therapy, or this is what I want to do because it's my belief system. And that's when it's like, okay, parents, research and then choose what's best for you and your family. And I think like Andie's saying, if it's giving you anxiety or you're waking up panicked every night, there's another option.
Yes, I couldn't do it. And plus I'm already not a peaceful sleeper, so it's not safe for anybody. But I do feel like kids at a certain age should not, like, I've heard of people doing the whole family bed thing. I'm not for it. I'm going to say that. I'm not for it. I think kids should sleep in a bed, their own bed. Or with siblings. Siblings can share beds, but I'm against it. I'm just going to say it. I'm against it.
There you go.
Don't tell me if you do it. I don't want to hear it.
There's her line.
I am willing. Some would say I'm the brave one.
Some would say.
Some would say that. I have issue with the family bed. I don't care if they did it in the pioneer days. This is not the pioneer days. And people weren't safe. And people died at like 30. Like that was old age in the pioneer days. People died young. Infant mortality was through the roof.
Gosh.
Like this was not. We don't need to emulate pioneer days. Yes, grow your own food. Like, yes, great. Make your own stuff. Be sustainable. But besides that, they weren't living the life. Did you read The Long Winter by Laura Ingalls Wilder? They suffered. These people suffered. We do not want to come back to that. This is not, we're in the future now. We have wisdom. We have knowledge. We have electricity. That's where I'm going to stop there because I am going to get in trouble.
What worked in the pioneer days might not work for today. That's all she's trying to say.
Children should not play with pigs' bladders as balloons anymore. They can't.
Gosh.
Like if you live on a farm, like whatever, but like it's a different world and it's okay. It's okay that you buy your food from the store. Buy organic. I don't know. Get your milk from the farm, but
Andie,
I'm sorry.
I'm just going to say this. People who are Amish are not listening to this podcast. So it's okay. You're not offending those who are Amish due to the whole their belief system, electronics, electricity situation.
I wasn't even thinking of the Amish. I was thinking of like super hyper sustainable people. I don't know. I was thinking of a very niche Whole Foods co-op group. I don't know.
Shout out Whole Foods.
I love Whole Foods.
Shout out.
I love growing your own vegetables. I don't love co-sleeping.
That's okay. I mean, we have houses with bedrooms now. Use the bedrooms for your children to sleep in.
We don't have to build our houses to survive. Like, we don't have to cut down trees and saw logs and fit them together like Lincoln logs in order to survive the long, hard winter. We have bedrooms now.
We don't like Lincoln logs.
It is. We don't need.
Wow.
There's no reason to have a family bed. I've said it. That's what I'm running for on my next election. If you want me to get political.
That's going to be on the button. Vote for Andie.
No family beds allowed. Anyway, we're out of time on that note.
I know.
We hope we solved everything for you.
We have so many other things to talk about, so we're going to have another sleeping podcast. But this has been fantastic because at the end of the day, moms, we just want you to do what's best for you so you can sleep and you can have energy and you can feel refreshed and renewed to tackle the next day. Because being a mom, whether you have a baby, a toddler, an elementary school age, middle schooler, high schooler, or even like Andie who has college kids and kids who are married, it is exhausting. And one way to help with that exhaustion is to simply rest. And whatever that looks like for you, we want you to be able to sleep as much as possible, whenever possible, whether that is you wake up multiple times a night, like Andie's mother-in-law, or whether you are sleeping 10 hours a night, or
you sleepwalk, like my dad.
And sleep talk, and your kids are asking for permission when you're sleep talking. Who knows? Who knows?
I've also been known to sleepwalk. I have some pretty embarrassing stories, but that's another time.
For another time, another day.
Another time. Like share us, especially if you have a mom out there who's needs to know the Angie method. The tire them out, stroller them out, hang out in the room method. Do it.
I gotta come
up. Do it. I dare you.
I need to come up with like a cool name for that. You know?
If there's someone you know who has a family bed.
Oh, gosh.
Share this with them.
I was going to say, don't share this with them.
Do it.
But you just went right there. You're like, share it. I was like, don't tell them.
I know. I'm telling you I'm the brave one.
About the podcast.
No.
Not Andie.
I will get in trouble for the family bed. I'm drawing my line in the sand.
Wow. She has taken a stand, and I love it.
I'm taking a stand. All right. That's enough of us.
Later.
Talk to you later. All right, that's all we have time for today. We got to wrap it up, unfortunately. But just remember, you might think you're doing just okay, but we think you're doing really great.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. We hope you have a great Mother Funny day. Please like and share our podcast.
But please don't tell our moms.